In rural Honduras, 10-month-old Stephen fights to breathe. To reach a doctor, his mother Narada walked for hours, carrying her feverish baby in her arms. She's told the violent shaking of his chest signals pneumonia, a dangerous bacterial infection. Fortunately, there are medicines that can cure this disease, antibiotics, but only if they're given in time. And Stephen has lost precious hours. He must be sent to a hospital to be put on a respirator. During the nerve-wracking 4-hour journey, Narada prays the antibiotics being injected into Stephen will work. As the ambulance races, a nurse keeps him breathing with a hand pump. In the emergency ward, doctors struggled to get Stephen on the only available respirator in the country. As her son clings to life, Narada can only watch and hope.
I'm so afraid to lose him. Before I brought him, on the day he turned worse, he said, "Mama," for the first time. I would not like this to be his last time.
Dr. Jorge Melendez has helped to stabilize Stephen. Now it's a waiting game.
Because pneumonia, when it's treated as soon as the first symptoms arise, in most cases, is totally curable.
Los casos evolucionan satisfactoriamente.
As the days pass, Stephen's antibiotics finally beat back the infection. Exhausted, but over the crisis, he has survived an attack by one of our deadliest enemies, bacteria. These microscopic creatures have dominated the planet for over 3 billion years, and they can be found everywhere.
They can live in boiling water, they can live in freezing temperatures, they can live in the center of solid rock, and in fact, if we look at our own bodies, we are basically walking bacteria. There are on the order of 10 to 100 trillion bacterial cells on and in us, every one of us. We could not live without bacteria.
While most bacteria are useful, even helping to make the oxygen we breathe, some cause severe disease. For millennia, there were no medicines to stop their deadly assault. But with the dawn of the 20th century, a new war against microbes was about to begin. World War I. Battles are raging across Europe. And wherever the guns go, deadly bacterial infections follow close behind. In a field hospital in France, Alexander Fleming, a young British doctor, is horrified by what he sees around him. More soldiers die from the bacteria invading their open wounds than from bombs or bullets. Desperate for any solution, the medics try scouring the injuries with carbolic acid, a chemical antiseptic used to clean sewer pipes.
Fleming! And it is?
Septic. We'll have to amputate it.
Try using more carbolic acid.
No, it doesn't work.
Let's double the strength.
No, that doesn't work either. Sir, I don't think...
It's an order, Fleming!
But Fleming is right.
Nurse?
The treatment is useless.
Double the strength.
And by the end of the war, bacterial infections will claim millions of lives.
Strength.
Alexander Fleming, a doctor without a cure, would return to London and dedicate his life to finding one. He begins by studying bacteria, determined to find chinks in their armor. Year after year, he gets nowhere. Then, one day in 1928, chance intervenes, thanks to Fleming's sloppy housekeeping. In a pile of petri dishes he's forgotten to clean, he notices something unusual. A stray bit of mold has landed on a dish of deadly bacteria, and it's wiping them out.
He looks into this dish and he sees what turns out to be one of the great scientific discoveries ever. Here was a killer organism, Staphylococcus, terrible to human beings, dead from something that a mold had produced. Fleming is clearly aware of the notion that life hinders life. The notion that one organism can eat another like a lion eats its prey in the jungle.
Just like creatures in the visible world, microscopic life, like molds and bacteria, will fight each other for survival. In a moment of epiphany, Fleming realizes the mold is defending itself by secreting something that destroys the bacteria. The mysterious substance targets the cell walls, prohibiting the bacteria from dividing and producing more bacteria, so they quickly die off. Fleming calls his discovery penicillin, after the common mold Penicillium, which is often found on rotting food. If he can isolate the bacteria-killing substance, he might have the weapon he's been searching for.
And he would really spend the next 2 or 3 years trying to discern what it was in this mold that killed the bacteria. But he was not a chemist.
Unable to extract the penicillin, Fleming finally gives up. But he publishes an article in an obscure journal and keeps the original mold alive, just in case. Had it not been for another world war, Fleming's discovery may have remained quietly hidden. But as World War II engulfs the globe, infections are again killing soldiers at an alarming rate. Searching for a cure, Oxford scientists Howard Florey and Ernst Chain discover Fleming's paper on penicillin and borrow his penicillium molds. They then set out to accomplish what Fleming could not.
Penicillin is the most elusive, unstable bit of medicine you could ever try to capture. It was this will-o'-the-wisp that would disappear.
Finally, by altering the chemical state of molecules produced by the mold, they isolate small amounts of penicillin. It easily cures infections in mice. But will it work as well on humans? Their first patient is a dying policeman named Albert Alexander, who scratched his cheek in his rose garden.
Imagine a time where just scratching your face on a rose thorn can lead you to be so eaten by bacteria. That's Albert Alexander. And the bacteria are eating through his body like worms eating an apple. And then he gets a shot of penicillin, one shot of penicillin that's not even particularly pure. And then this miraculous thing occurs. These bacteria, which have had their will with him, are suddenly at bay. Here Chain and Florey and the others are thinking, this is a gigantic moment in medicine. We're going to cure this man from the brink of death. And then they ran out of penicillin. And he died that horrible death that he had nearly died a month before.
Despite the tragedy, Florey and Chain are certain they found one of the holy grails of medicine, a drug to stop infections. But with British industry crippled by Nazi bombing, how will they ever produce enough of it? Florey turns to American companies for help, and they discover how to mass-produce the drug by fermenting it like beer.
Scientists are manufacturing this wonder drug in enormous quantities.
The wonder drug proves itself a potent weapon, saving thousands of Allied soldiers' lives.
Until the Second World War, there wasn't a lot that could actually be done for people. And the discovery of penicillin led to a great opening of the era of medicines.
The realization that a simple mold could produce an effective drug inspires scientists to search for other organisms that might do the same. New medicines derived from molds, funguses, and even bacteria flood the market. Tetracycline, cephalosporin, erythromycin, called antibiotics, meaning against life. These miracle drugs can stop infections like pneumonia, gangrene, and meningitis. Even the most widespread bacterial disease of all, tuberculosis, is finally curable with antibiotics. In the epic war against microbes, it looks as if humanity has finally won. It's a huge gamble. The only thing sure is time is running out, and the epidemic is spreading. huge gamble. The only thing sure is time is running out, and the epidemic is spreading.
I think the only option, probably the best one available, is Dr. Maya. It quickly identifies individuals with infection and helps us to isolate them so that the family and friends and local people are not infected. We know partial exposure to bacteria or virus help us develop herd immunity. People living at home, community, county will develop immunity to protect themselves from Superbugs. Where can we get Dr. Maya from? Dr. Maya can be downloaded from Google Play or Apple stores. It's free to download and very easy to use. Using Dr. Maya, you can create a local group of doctors and patients. You can also order my book, Maya Brings Tears of Happiness, or Maya Fighting Infections, Saving Lives from Amazon.
Break up our happy home. Oh, I don't get so excited when I come home a little late at night, 'cause we only act like children when we argue, fuss and fight. If you don't know me by now, if you don't know me, you will never, never, never know me. No, you won't. Don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. We all got our own funny moods. I've got mine.
2,000 miles away in Seattle, Washington, time is also running out for Ryan Worth, who has a drug-resistant infection that's getting worse.
I'm very scared. I'd never dreamed that I'd have bacteria to have to fight such a battle with.
Ryan's struggle began 6 months ago during kidney dialysis, when the procedure led to an infection in his abdomen. He's taken one antibiotic after another without success.
He did have some resistance to the antibiotics, and we tried basically everything we knew was available. It just hasn't been working.
Ryan's infection is caused by a common bacterium found in soil. It's not usually dangerous, but like TB in Peru, this strain has mutated into a superbug.
Well, they pretty much described a superbug to me as a bacteria that's just stubborn, that it's resistant to a lot of different antibiotics that they have available.
As the bacteria continue to multiply, Ryan is running out of options. Today, his surgeon, Dr. Raker, will try to cut the infection out.
Here is the abscess itself. It should not be there, and we're hoping to completely excise the infected area.
Resorting to the knife to save patients' lives was routine before the discovery of antibiotics. But Ryan's doctors know this is the only hope for keeping his infection from spreading to the rest of his body.
You see, the abscess is in my hand now. I've got it.
We were really pleased that we could get around it, and I think we got all of it out, all the gross contamination out.
Although the operation seems successful, if a single microbe remains in Ryan's body, it could reinfect him. With Ryan's life still on the line, Dr. Schwartz wants him to try an experimental antibiotic. Called tigacycline, it's only available for the most desperate patients.
You don't know if you want to be a guinea pig. It almost gets to the point where you got to choose, take the test medicine or die.
They're getting the drug ready to give you now. Do you have any other questions we didn't have a chance to talk about?
I'm scared that this option won't work. That the microbacteria will win.
As the golden-colored drug flows towards Ryan's veins, he has no idea if his body will tolerate the experimental medicine. It will be months before he knows if he's cured.
Times are changing. Bacteria is getting smarter and smarter. It's adapting to all the medications, the antibiotics that people are taking. There needs to be more of them available.
I think the only option, probably the best one available, is Dr. Maya. It quickly identifies individuals with infection and helps us to isolate them so that the family and friends and local people are not infected. We know partial exposure to bacteria or virus help us develop herd immunity. People living at home, community, county will develop immunity to protect themselves from superbugs. Where can we get Dr. Maya from? Dr. Maya can be downloaded from Google Play or Apple stores. It's free to download and very easy to use. Using Dr. Maya, you can create a local group of doctors and patients. You can also order my book, Maya Brings Tears of Happiness, or Maya Fighting Infections, Saving Lives from Amazon.
Gonna do nothing to break up our happy home. Oh, don't get so excited when I come home a little late at night, 'cause we only act like children when we argue, fuss and fight. If you don't know me by now, if you don't know me, you will never, never, never know me. No, you won't. If you don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. We all got our own funny moods. I've got mine.
What are superbugs? Let me start with a quote from Charles Darwin. He said, "It's not the strongest of species or the most intelligent ones that survive, but the ones that can quickly adapt to change as well." Bacteria are single-cell species that are similar to us, animals and birds. They are the first species on Earth and have lived here for billions of years. Bacteria need food, water, air and to survive, but are continuously multiplying. They live for only 15 to 20 minutes. They are tiny, lived on us, and are now exploiting our genetic vulnerability with lethal precision. They are stronger and more intelligent and are now armed with plasmids. What are plasmids? Soon after we started using penicillin in 1950s, bacteria called Staphylococcus started collecting information and developed resistance. This was reported in 1960s. These bacteria created a database of all the chemicals including antibiotics and stored them in a little envelope called plasmid. So any bacteria that has plasmid can be called a superbug. The superbugs pass on the plasmid to their babies, are also picked up by friendly bacteria and viruses or fungus that are living nearby after this bacteria dies. Let me explain this better. Superbug is like a madman who's picked up a gun from a dead man and is now running around like a headless chicken, behaving like a terrorist, killing people. Now we have 18 bacteria, funguses, parasites and numerous viruses that are armed with plasmid and are waiting to attack us. Are bacteria developing resistance faster than we can invent them? Certainly yes. Since 1970, we have not spent time or money to continue our research and develop new antibiotics or methods to fight infection. Now we are desperately trying to find alternatives but are failing miserably. We have not understood what information is stored in the plasmid and how these bacteria use this information to defend themselves from strong chemicals or antibiotics we throw at them. How can we prevent infection spreading? Infections spread directly or indirectly. Directly via water, food, air and contact. Indirectly using a vector like mosquito, animals or birds. We must stop drinking contaminated water, food, and stay away from infected people and animals. If mosquitoes, cockroaches, rats, birds, bats are transmitting the infection, we must try and eradicate. I think we must first learn to live and let live. In other words, stop using antibiotics, strong chemicals to clean hospitals, homes, our body, and help friendly bacteria to thrive and help us fight superbugs. Isolation of infected patients using their symptoms is probably the best method to help us fight infection and save lives. What are symptoms? Symptoms are body's normal response to an insult. This is what we call as inflammation. Inflammation is a normal reflex that helps protect our body from physical and psychological traumas inflicted upon us. When a bacteria enters our body, first our body temperature will go up to help kill bacteria that are entering. Our heart starts beating faster to send an army of white blood cells to fight and kill bacteria that is entering our body. If the infection is on the skin, you will notice local swelling, redness, and you also experience pain. Diseases are names given to conditions based on combination of symptoms and signs. When you visit a doctor, they will first ask you a few questions. Based on the question, they will derive at a hypothetical diagnosis of an illness. They may call it arthritis, tonsillitis, bronchitis, or just a viral infection. If the combination symptoms are common, they often advise or prescribe antibiotics if necessary. If the symptoms are not common, they will clinically examine you and identify signs, request blood tests, scan, X-ray to confirm their hypothetical diagnosis. If the symptoms are serious, they will immediately refer you as an emergency to a hospital or a specialist. How can Dr. Maya app help people? I created Dr. Maya to work as an assistant. Maya requests you to identify 3 symptoms. Using this combination, Maya will differentiate common from serious illness and share information, advise you to speak to a doctor, book an appointment, or advise you to go to a hospital as an emergency. How can Maya help prevent pandemics? When you choose 3 symptoms, Maya will differentiate infection from a non-infectious disease. Our server will work as a monitor of symptoms to track clusters of symptoms occurring in an area, in a hospital, town hall, and inform local doctors, alert infectious disease control department to help isolate infected patients and help them impose quarantine to prevent spreading this infection locally. What alternatives do we have? Unfortunately, we have none. There is only one antibiotic on phase 1 trial that may be available 10 years later. One antibiotic cannot kill 18 types of bacteria. In other words, we will have to invent 18 new antibiotics to fight these infections. The more chemicals we throw at them, stronger they become. I think the only option, probably the best one available, is Dr. Maya. It quickly identifies individuals with infection and helps us to isolate them so that the family and friends and local people are not infected. We know partial exposure to bacteria or virus help us develop herd immunity. People living at home, community, county will develop immunity to protect themselves from superbugs. Where can we get Dr. Maya from? Dr. Maya can be downloaded from Google Play or Apple stores. It's free to download and very easy to use. Using Dr. Maya, you can create a local group of doctors and patients. You can also order my book, Maya Brings Tears of Happiness, or Maya Fighting Infections, Saving Life, from Amazon.
But just a few decades later, a disturbing trend shadows the world. Infectious microbes are staging a comeback. In Lima, Peru, 29-year-old Raquel wonders why she is still suffering from tuberculosis. For years, she's been taking antibiotics, but she remains highly infectious, and her lungs are weak and battered.
None of my friends know that I have TB because I'm afraid that they will say, just go away. I feel that if I am, I won't be able to bear the pain, so I would rather not see them.
Raquel is used to rejection. Her husband left to avoid getting sick. Now, she and her son Bruno must depend on her elderly mother, and their future looks bleak. Nearby, Julia Giuseppe has also battled TB for years. Tests reveal her children are infected as well, but they haven't developed active. In fact, 1/3 of the world's population now carries the TB bacillus in their body, like a time bomb waiting to go off.
10% of those people, about 200 million, before they die, will develop the active form of tuberculosis. The fact is, there are more people now infected with tuberculosis than at any other time in human history.
Fueling the rise of TB are the millions of people now infected with HIV/AIDS, whose weakened immune systems make them vulnerable. But that's not the only reason the disease plagues countries like Peru. In Lima, TB thrives in shantytowns like Caraballo, where tiny shacks cling to any patch of unclaimed rocky hillside. With impoverished families crammed into tight quarters, it's the perfect breeding ground for TB bacteria that pass through the air from victim to victim. Because the bacteria are constantly evolving, patients like Julia must take multiple drugs for months, and following the regimen is critical. As the drugs start killing the germ, many people begin to feel better and stop taking their pills. But a few germs are naturally resistant to the antibiotic. These survive, quickly multiply, and become the majority. Now, if patients restart their medicines, these resistant bacteria become tougher to kill. Because this was happening in Peru, in 1991, the government set up a program called DOC for Directly Observed Therapy. The premise is, if nurses make sure patients swallow all their antibiotics every day for 6 months, they will always be cured. And this was the fortunate outcome for most TB victims, but not all. In Caraballo, the crosses of people dying from TB began creeping up the mountainside as steadily as the squatter settlement itself. In 1995, the situation puzzles two doctors, Paul Farmer and Jim Kim, working in Caraballo through their non-profit group, Partners in Health.
Peru had the best TB program in the world, and yet we were finding patient after patient after patient still suffering from tuberculosis. And we felt certain that there was a big problem.
To find out why patients in a model program are not getting better, Kim and Farmer send Peruvian colleague Jaime Bayona into the clinics to investigate.
I asked the nurses if they knew of people that were sick with TB, that went every day to the health center to take pills, but were never healed. And the answer was, yeah, we have a lot of cases like that.
Since medical records are confidential, Jaime reads the files upside down, searching for the telltale R's indicating patients whose TB is resistant to their medicines.
I was shocked because the usual way of explaining drug resistance is, well, patients aren't taking their meds, and these patients have been compliant, and we had written documentation of their therapy.
We then started asking some hard questions, and we asked the physicians, what's going on with these patients? Don't you think they have drug resistance? And the answer was a pretty stock one. No, there's no problem of drug resistance. DOTS is curing everybody. It's not an issue, it's not an issue, it's not an issue.
Kim and Farmer are skeptical, but to prove otherwise, they will need lab tests. In 1995, they send the bacterial samples from several Caraballo patients to a state lab in Massachusetts. The results are chilling. Most samples are resistant not to one, but to all 5 antibiotics normally used to treat TB. As Kim and Farmer suspected, it was not the patients that were the problem, but dangerous strains of multi-drug resistant, or MDR, TB. That is why Raquel is not getting better. The DOTS drugs are useless against her highly resistant TB. Now more than ever, she fears infecting her son Bruno, but all she can do is try not to breathe on.
My son wants to play with me and kiss me, and he does not understand what's going on. He thinks that I am mean, that I don't love him, but I always tell him that I am sick, that I can infect him. And he says, it doesn't matter, you can. It doesn't matter if you're contagious.
Although she fears spreading the disease, there are days when Raquel has to go to the market. Everyone around her is at risk.
It's really a crisis. It's not as if these patients with active MDR-TB were being put in sanatoria. They weren't being removed from the community. They were right there, sick with an infectious disease in a big crowded city.
If the epidemic isn't stopped, it will spread beyond the city, or even the continent. Worse, these deadly strains could easily become untreatable.
The notion that you could be sitting on an airplane, even if you're in first class, and become infected with a disease that could kill you and that modern medicine could do nothing about is very frightening. And we went to the authorities and said, we'd like to start treating these patients. And at first they said, you will not treat these patients. And we said, not treat the patients. We just couldn't understand why.
The problem is, the few drugs that cure MDR-TB are highly toxic and cause dangerous side effects. Rarely used, they are so expensive, the Peruvian government can't afford them.
The price of treating MDR patients was so high, it was impossible for us. It was not only an economic problem, the treatment was too complex and difficult to manage. We couldn't justify the investment.
Even the World Health Organization agrees. In the 1990s, the official policy around the globe is to treat those with curable TB and let MDR victims die.
And we thought, but that's not public health, that's sort of like public death.
These are people who have already been told there's nothing that can be done for you. And it was really sort of their last chance. Not sort of, why qualify it? This was really the last chance for people who were sick with these highly resistant strains.
As the bacteria continue to multiply, Ryan is running out of options. Today, his surgeon, Dr. Raker, will try to cut the infection out.
Here is the abscess itself. It should not be there, and we're hoping to completely excise the infected area.
Resorting to the knife to save patients' lives was routine before the discovery of antibiotics. But Ryan's doctors know this is the only hope for keeping his infection from spreading to the rest of his body.
You see, the abscess is in my hand now. I've got it.
We were really pleased that we could get around it, and I think we got all of it out, all the gross contamination out.
I think the only option, probably the best one available, is Dr. Maya. It quickly identifies individuals with infection and helps us to isolate them so that the family and friends and local people are not infected. We know partial exposure to bacteria or virus help us develop herd immunity. People living at home, community, county will develop immunity to protect themselves from superbugs. Where can we get Dr. Maya from? Dr. Maya can be downloaded from Google Play or Apple stores. It's free to download and very easy to use. Using Dr. Maya, you can create a local group of doctors and patients. You can also order my book, Maya Brings Tears of Happiness, or Maya Fighting Infections, Saving Lives from Amazon.
To break up our happy home. Oh, don't get so excited when I come home a little late at night, 'cause we only act like children when we argue, fuss and fight. If you don't know me by now, if you don't know me, you will never, never, never know me. No, you won't. Don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. We all got our own funny moods. I've got mine.
Explosion of antibiotics discovered in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the faucet is running dry. Of the hundreds of drugs currently under government review, only a handful are for bacterial infections.
And that's bad news for the public. In fact, I think they should be terrified. It's taken us 12 years to get tigecycline anywhere near the market. This makes these drugs commercially unsuccessful, and it really discourages other people from going into the field. So we've got to make the process simpler, faster, because drugs don't come cheap.
It can easily cost over $500 million to develop a new drug. Since antibiotics are taken infrequently, they are far less profitable than the drugs people need every day. Pills that manage cholesterol, high blood pressure, depression, or even libido. And that's why most pharmaceutical companies are getting out of the antibiotic business.
One has to balance their risks in this industry. Where are you going to invest your money? And, it sounds crass, but the fact is, if we were to stay in business by trying to find drugs that would lose us money every time we develop them, we wouldn't be able to find any drugs.
Not only are antibiotics less profitable, miracle microbes are getting harder to find, but research on any drug can take over a decade. For every 5,000 compounds tested, only one will become a medicine.
99% of what we do in drug discovery fails, and it fails every day. Part of the reason is that a lot of things look good in the lab. Even peppermint extract will kill HIV in the test tube. But taking something from the test tube into the human body is a whole different order of complexity.
Meanwhile, for more and more patients like Ryan, the crisis is getting worse.
And the horrifying thing is that every day in the front lines of these hospitals, we're encountering bacteria that we can't kill with our current antibiotics. We're just running out of weapons to use against them.
The situation is heading us towards a major public health disaster. It is like watching the airplanes heading towards the World Trade Center with our hands tied.
Perhaps the most alarming threat is from common Staph aureus. Ironically, it's the same bacteria that penicillin killed in Alexander Fleming's Petri dish. Now new multi-drug resistant strains, known as MRSA, can thwart almost every antibiotic, catching even the strongest and healthiest among us off guard. Football players are extremely vulnerable, crashing into each other and opening scrapes and cuts that could let MRSA bacteria enter their bloodstreams.
These are drug-resistant staph infections that are arising in everyday, healthy, in this case robust athletes, who are contracting this just as a matter of doing their jobs. That's pretty scary, that you can get a drug-resistant infection just by playing the game of football.
This is what happened to Ricky Linetti, star football player, number 19, at Lycoming College. Ricky scored touchdowns in every conceivable manner, catching 16 passes in one game. His team was headed to the championship playoffs when he got ill days before the big game. He told his mother he didn't have time to get sick.
Ricky thought he had a stomach virus. That's what he thought he had. Then, we thought maybe it was coming down with the flu. But when I saw him, I was scared to death. I mean, he couldn't walk.
At 7:30 a.m., Ricky was admitted to the Williamsport Hospital. Although he was rushed to intensive care, he didn't seem to realize how sick he was.
Ricky was an elite athlete. And so when he came in, even though he was breathing at 40 times a minute, he denied that he was short of breath. He said, "I'm not short of breath, I'm fine." But just one look at him told us that he was in trouble.
Ricky was given a massive infusion of fluid and medicine to stabilize his blood pressure. Despite a battery of tests, his diagnosis remained unclear. But fearing an infection, his doctors gave him multiple antibiotics, hoping one would work.
I was told that something is attacking his body. We don't know what it is right now, but we're trying to find out. But the whole time I was just thinking, he's Ricky Linetti. Ain't no bug's gonna kill him. Not a bug, not something that you can't see.
They had a heart specialist, the critical care specialist, the kidney specialist, a lung specialist, and then finally at one point they did say, "We can't handle this. We can't handle it. He's too sick."
Ricky's kidneys had failed, his liver had failed, his circulation was collapsing. It felt to me like I had a pile of sand in my hands and it was just slipping through my fingers.
Just 1 week after winning his 9th football game of the season, Ricky Linetti was dead. Lab tests revealed he was stricken by the same strain of MRSA, hospitalizing athletes across the country. Although he was given one antibiotic that could have killed this strain, Ricky was too far gone for the drug to save him.
This case was a real wake-up call in the sense that Ricky was in as good a shape as anybody could be in. He was 21 years old, the prime of his life, and yet he could not fight off this organism. If he can get it, anyone can get it.
Ricky's father now spends hours surfing the web, learning about other MRSA cases.
MRSA, more death. Now, at first, I did see a lot of articles where people had abscesses that required surgeries, that required amputations, but these people didn't die from it. Now people are dying from it. Doctors and hospitals are telling people to wash their hands, don't share towels. That's fine. It doesn't satisfy me. What would satisfy me would be, like any other kind of disease you may get, that you'd be able to take something after the fact to kill it.
While a few antibiotics can still stop this superbug, even they are beginning to encounter resistance.
We need to remove the economic disincentives that exist to work on antibiotics, because these drugs save lives immediately. They're obviously critically important to us as a society.
Back in Peru, the dire need for new antibiotics is starkly apparent. Despite the growing epidemic, not a single new TB drug has been developed in 30 years.
When you're sick with tuberculosis caused by a strain like this, a very resistant strain, you have one shot, and it should be very aggressive. Lots of drugs, high doses, never miss a dose, because the microbe can hang out and then resurface later.
But many fear visiting highly contagious patients in their homes.
They asked us questions like, well, you're asking us to take care of these patients and we're scared. Aren't you scared? Now, I'll never forget, the answer that Paul gave was, yeah, I'm scared. Everyone's scared. But look, it's in the community, and the only way to deal with this is to take it head on.
One nurse willing to take the risk is Lorena Mastava. Although it's dangerous, she chooses not to wear a protective mask, so patients like Raquel won't feel stigmatized.
It's not that the masks are physically uncomfortable, but it's like speaking to patients through a window. I want to be close to them, so the mask is like a barrier.
For Lorena, winning a patient's trust is crucial, especially when she must convince them to take medicines that cause horrible side effects. One of Lorena's toughest cases is Antonio. As he struggled to work his way through school, he became infected. At age 21, he weighs only 66 pounds. For 12 months, Lorena has been treating Antonio with 6 different drugs.
The pills are hurting.
Antonio is having a lot of stomach problems because of the drugs. He struggles with nausea, as well as fatigue, depression, and joint pains.
Those early months were the most difficult, because here we were giving treatment that no one had heard of, with drugs that no one had heard of. And while they were getting better in some ways, they were also really sick with side effects. So we had to go and stand by them and convince them, please, you need to continue taking your medicines, because if you don't...
X-rays reveal that TB still consumes Raquel's lungs.
There is no improvement in my condition. I don't know why. Maybe I'm too resistant. I've been told to stop taking my medications because they no longer have any effect on me. I don't know what drugs I'm going to receive next.
It turns out that Raquel is carrying a strain of bacteria resistant to virtually all TB drugs. But she appears to be in the minority. Unfortunately, worldwide funding for such programs has fallen short. Of the estimated 500,000 victims with multi-drug resistant TB, only a fraction is being treated correctly. As a result, the disease is spreading.
Multi-drug resistant tuberculosis is dangerous, scary, and a huge public health threat. So that if we don't take the steps for all of us to work together, and the wealthier nations helping the poorer nations, all of us are going to become ill.
For Jim Kim, it makes economic sense to act quickly.
If you don't treat it now, and if you don't spend the money now, you're going to spend much, much more money later.
And this is true for all infectious diseases.
MDR-TB is part of the larger problem, the crisis of drug resistance. And you just go down the list of the big killers: malaria, AIDS, tuberculosis, bacterial infections that take lives in hospitals. Drug resistance is already a huge problem. So all of our best drugs could be obsolete with each of these diseases. We should be thinking ahead.
The specter of totally drug-resistant infections now haunts the world. With no antibiotics to save her, Raquel passed away. Her son Bruno has also tested positive for TB.
It's preposterous to think we could ever, quote-unquote, win the war against microbes. This is not a war, it's a holding action. What we want to do is keep one step ahead of them.
The medicines that saved Stephen in Honduras or Antonio in Peru could soon lose their power, leaving all of us vulnerable to once curable diseases. To ensure a safer future, we need to find better ways to control these threats. In a high-security biosafety lab, researchers stare at the chilling results of recent tests. Deadly tuberculosis bacteria have managed to withstand almost every drug that can kill them. This means strains of contagious airborne bacteria are mutating into superbugs that may soon be unstoppable.
I was shocked because I had never seen tuberculosis resistant to 10 drugs.
The samples come from Lima, Peru, an easy plane ride to cities like New York. Even more worrisome, they're from TB victims who are taking antibiotics that should be curing them.
We were finding patient after patient just not doing well. And we felt certain that there was a big problem here.
From the slums of the developing world to the richest cities on Earth, diseases once easy to treat are becoming harder to cure.
Times are changing. Bacteria is getting smarter and smarter. I didn't have to dream that I'd have one that I'd have to fight such a battle with.
For decades, we've counted upon life-saving drugs to rescue us. But as the germs fight back, our medicines are failing.
The situation is heading us towards a major public health disaster.
A perfect microbial storm is brewing. And if we ignore it, we could be swept back to the era when microbes were invincible. Next, on RX for Survival, Rise of the Superbug. Because the bugs will never go away.
We know how to prevent infectious diseases, but it doesn't do a bit of good unless it gets to the people.
And in the modern world, disease can travel on wings, large and small.
They outnumber us, and they've been at the survival game a lot longer than the human population.
RX for Survival continues on PBS.
understand me like I understand you.
I think the only option, probably the best one available, is Dr. Maya. It quickly identifies individuals with infection and helps us to isolate them so that the family and friends and local people are not infected. We know partial exposure to bacteria or virus help us develop herd immunity. People living at home, community, county will develop immunity to protect themselves from Superbugs. Where can we get Dr. Maya from? Dr. Maya can be downloaded from Google Play or Apple stores. It's free to download and very easy to use. Using Dr. Maya, you can create a local group of doctors and patients. You can also order my book, Maya Brings Years of Happiness, or Maya Fighting Infections, Saving Lives from Amazon.
We all got our own funny moods. I've got mine. Woman, you got yours too. Just trust in me like I trust in you. As long as we've been together, it should be so easy to do.